So, hello everybody. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Lenorë Lambert, and Lenorë's had a really long-standing interest in Buddhist psychology, and she is an athlete and a psychologist, and she's a secular Buddhist teacher, and now she's also an author. So, welcome, Lenorë.
Thanks, Tim. Good to be here.
Yeah, great to talk to you. And I'm interested, what brought you to write this book? Where did it start for you?
It actually started quite a long time ago. I started writing the book 9 years before I finished it. And it was born of, my exploration of the Dharma, of the Buddha's teachings, took a long time. It was probably 10, 15 years before I kind of felt that I could get my arms around it and really knew what he was on about in any level with any confidence, I suppose. And it's sort of towards the end of that 15-year, roughly, journey, I found that I seemed to have a bit of a knack for explaining some of the concepts to newcomers. I was finding I was running my own Sangha, my own meditation group. And a lot of people who would have all the same kind of confusions that I had when I set out. And I was finding that I was able to distill and explain in ways that people could understand a lot of the things that had been confusing them for a long time. And so it was actually numerous people over time saying to me, can you recommend a good, introductory secular book where I can sort of get the basics and get my head around it? And I couldn't, because, there are lots of great books around, but most of them are either not secular. They come from one of the more religious Buddhist traditions, and so they often contain ideas and concepts that Westerners really struggle with. Or the few books that were secular, because secular Dharma is a newer movement, often assume basic knowledge is there already. And so I just couldn't, and so I started writing it. And yes, as I say, there was lots of stopping and starting because, lots of other stuff going on in life, but finally I finished it. And so the idea is to sort of shortcut for other people that 15-year journey and say, here's a shortcut to getting your head around it.
Beautiful.
That I hope will be really helpful for people.
Yeah. So who do you think it might benefit most?
I think, well, my intended audience is people who maybe are starting from a similar place to where I was, which is, coming from a Western culture where we have we're trained in evidence-based thinking. We struggle with metaphysical concepts like rebirth, for example, or literal karma. And we have questioning minds and think for ourselves. And so when you come across some of these more traditional approaches to the Dharma, which are all, creations of other cultures and times, then, people can get turned off. And I've literally heard, people say, the Buddha taught that, detachment is how to get happy. And I just can't come at that. And yet that's actually not what the Buddha taught. But yeah, so it's for people who come from that kind of mindset, critical thinking, evidence-based and practical. So I have a very sort of so what attitude to it. It's knowledge is, only so useful unless it actually leads to some practical benefit. And MBSR that your crew would be familiar with, whether they know it or not, is one outworking of that practical benefit.
Indeed. Beautiful. And how does this impact your life? Like, that's a huge question, 15 years, and the whole of everything went before too, like but I'm just really interested to hear how you bring this forth in your life, because that's one of the important things about MBSR. We're really wanting to make it pragmatic for people to embed in life and to make a practical difference to how you treat your kids, how you do your work, choices you make, ethical choices. So, I'm interested in just how, in a nutshell, just how has coming across this Buddhist psychology, this Dharma, really transformed things for you?
It is a huge question, Tim. It's hard to put in a nutshell, but because it impacts everything. Dharma practice is life. It's human experience, and so it touches everything that you do, as you say, your work, the way that you participate in family and friendship, the choices you make about how you spend your time. A huge one for me, because I could talk about this for weeks, but perhaps one that is brings it alive quite in a really vibrant and interesting way is through my sport. So, I'm a fairly committed masters athlete, sprinter and hurdler primarily. And athletics is a really individual sport too. So, there's your performance is measured to within 100th of a second. It's really clear if you do well or you don't do well. So there's lots of opportunity for ego to get involved. And there's lots of opportunity for disappointment. There's all sorts of setbacks. There's all sorts of, plans that go awry. And I talk about a number of these in the book to bring it alive. So dealing with difficulty would be, if I had to sort of put it in a nutshell, is often people come to the Dhamma because they're experiencing some kind of difficulty, some kind of unpleasantness, perhaps some kind of, pattern that they've realized is just going round and round and round, and they're not quite sure how to deal with things differently, or they're stressed, a lot of the people who come to your program. And so a big part of how the Dhamma has affected my life is dealing with that difficulty, dealing with stress. And what that's brought to my life in a practical way, to your question, is it has drained my life of a whole lot of stress. Not to say you don't feel any stress, but stress is a normal part of being a human being. And it's that ability to let it come and go, rather than it comes and all of a sudden we're pouring fuel on the fire and don't realize that it's our own response to that situation that's actually exacerbating it. So I've had all sorts of quite monumental failures and disappointments that the Dhamma has helped me deal with beautifully. So it's really a hard question to answer, because there's so many examples I could share with you. But and then on the and all sorts of difficulties, you get to midlife, especially as a woman, there's all sorts of challenges that can come with that. So those sorts of difficulties, difficult people that you come across in life, dealing well and with equanimity, with people like that. So it pretty much everything, even just waking up in a cranky mood. It really is something that can touch your entire life. And then that's to say nothing of course, the benefit of more fully experiencing and embracing and enjoying the pleasant parts of life too. So it's not all about dealing with the unpleasant, although, as I say, that's often what brings people to the Dhamma, because their usual ways of perhaps dealing with challenges they realise aren't delivering the goods, and so they're looking for something different. But there's also just as much benefit in terms of the joyful and beautiful part of it as well.
Embracing that. Well, I have read this book and I found it really insightful and kind of, very nuggety, very plain speaking, and asking, I love all the beginning, like all those wonderful questions you ask in the beginning, like all the dumb questions that everyone wants to ask, but you can't because, you're just not allowed. You look too foolish, but you just lay them all out. Yeah. And really in a pragmatic way, just go through so things can be digested and discerned from, different ways of looking at it from a way that, a Westerner, as you say, might want to take it up. So can you say the name of the book and we'll and where we can get it?
Yeah, so it's called The Buddha for Modern Minds, a non-religious guide to the Buddha and his teachings. I can show you.
Beautiful.
If you like. And you can get it all good online bookstores. Right. And there are even Bodhi Books over in Newtown, if anyone's in a city in Sydney, has a little stash there. But mostly the online bookstores all have it. So hopefully, I think, potentially having done your MBSR, done your MBSR course and your MBSR teacher training, and I suspect there's some people who might come out the other end of your course and think, I'd like to know a little bit more. And so it might be really helpful. Yeah, it
might actually be that book for people who've done MBSR and want to just go further but don't want to get into a kind of, religious kind of context with it. Okay, well, that's so good to talk and to hear just where you're coming from and what it is. And I think it can be so helpful for people. So may it go into the world.
Thanks, Tim.